Hi, I'm Graham, and this is a very special edition of my podcast about purpose-driven people. Now, some of you may remember that probably it was 3 years ago during the pandemic, I created this sort of podcast about how small businesses were coping with the lockdown. Anyway, that kind of turned into something else. It kind of turned into about having discussions about purpose and how people were keeping positive during the sort of the tough times, and talking about people's histories and how they found purpose in their life. And it kind of snowballed into that, and it became, I wouldn't say it was popular as that such, but we had a lot of fun doing it. And but unfortunately, when the sort of pandemic kind of started opening the doors again of business, I got very, very busy with my photography business. And unfortunately, I had to kind of put it on the shelf a little bit because I just didn't have the time to keep up with the podcast side of things. So that was until a few weeks ago, and when my old pal and good friend from Strongmen, Chris Tinsley, aka the Wolfman, got in touch with me. And after a little discussion about what he's been up to and what we've been up to, he persuaded me to open the doors again. And I'm not saying this is going to be a permanent thing, but we just thought we would revisit some of the things that we talked about before and what we've been doing. We haven't scripted it. We haven't really discussed much of it. We just thought, let's just do it and see how it goes. And maybe the podcast will start up again and we'll be moving forward to the future. There's lots of things that we're going to talk about, I'm sure. Mainly Chris, though, because if you know what he's like, he won't shut up for the next the next bit of time anyway. So over to you, Chris. Would you like to introduce yourself and let's crack on, mate?
I shall. I mean, I'm quite happy to keep this going until Christmas Day if you want. I could probably talk that long. If anyone did see the original one that Graham and I did together, I'm still Chris. I am still Wolfman Fitness, and a lot has happened in that time. It's strange, isn't it? Because we lived through a time when there was like a genuine pause in what was normal life, which is when we spoke.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, the world opened up again, and it's been this. It's almost been like traffic lights. It's like we got stuck at traffic lights on red for a bit, and we were there for quite a while. And people started to get impatient. Some people started to just relax, and then suddenly the lights went green, and we've all hurtled off again.
What's you've seen over the last few years, in particular, that's kind of changed for you?
I think. I know that obviously, it would be remiss to not acknowledge that for a lot of people, that time, the lockdown time, was challenging and difficult and threw up various issues and things. And I wasn't completely dissimilar, but like I referred to it as a pause to life. And I think I needed that at that moment in time. It did me a lot of good. It gave me time and space, like breathing space, to really get to grips with what I was trying to do, what I wanted to do, the direction I wanted to go in, all of those things. But also, anyone that knows me well knows that I follow the football quite a lot. And you hear this saying about the cup games for the lower league teams. They call it a free hit. Doesn't matter what happens, it's a free hit. But lots of the things that I tried during that period of time were exactly that, because so much couldn't actually happen or couldn't be allowed to progress at that moment in time. You got a lot of free hits, trying things that you wouldn't necessarily normally try because you could. So we did a lot of that during that time and coming out of that time. And then since speaking to you, obviously, as a personal trainer, when people were suddenly allowed to come and see me again, and I was allowed to actually meet people again, business ramped up quite a lot. And I think a lot of people, it's an odd one, because a lot of people started their own, I hate the phrase, but fitness journeys during lockdown, and invested heavily in themselves, which was brilliant to see. And not just like personally investing in themselves, but financially investing in themselves with equipment and kit and trying things. And then I think a lot of people realized it as much as it is simple, it's also not simple. The motivation is difficult. The fitting it into your lifestyle is difficult. Being accountable is difficult. So there was suddenly this influx from me from a work perspective of people that wanted to know more, do more. So that was obviously, from a business perspective, was brilliant. But the real shift was the closing of the gyms meant that, when we spoke last time, I was looking at different options, and I ended up putting together my own studio space where I live. And a couple of other PTs that I'm closely aligned with did the same. But when we came out of that scenario, they all went back to the commercial gyms, and I decided that I quite liked not being in them. And then what I also found then was, in so many ways, people's viewpoints and attitudes, I think, changed during that period of time, because we were given time in a way to stop and think. That I then found there was this little gap in the market of people that wanted a trainer, they wanted to exercise and use proper equipment, but they didn't want to go to gyms. So suddenly my little studio space became that little haven for those people. And then since then, building like a new community out of that, of this little niche group of fitness enthusiasts that train as hard as anyone that goes to a gym, are as dedicated as anyone go to a gym, but they come and do it in my little space instead, because it is exactly what it's meant to be when you're a personal trainer. It's a personal space. So that's been like the biggest work related development and shift. I mean, there's been lots more to it. I've branched off into lots of different, or revisited lots of different areas that I used to be quite heavily involved with. One that you will probably get to experience in the near future, which you know nothing about. I'm throwing that at you and you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Oh, here we go.
I've worked in, but I've essentially, I now consider myself to have been a coach since I was 16, which sounds crazy, but I did my first coaching badge when I was at school at 16. My second coaching badge I did when I was 17, and that was an archery leaders coaches award.
I remember talking about that.
Yeah. So this summer just gone, I took the opportunity. I had a bit of a break, and I went and I revisited that and a few other qualifications. And I've got in the pipeline for our little strongman community, we've actually got potentially some archery on the horizon come the summer. But yeah, just anything like that. Just I think for me personally, and for some other people I know as well, I know not for everybody, but for some people I know, that opportunity to rediscover things, rediscover yourself was really important in that time and really key. And in fact, I don't think ever easy, actually. I think that's the thing that's why maybe not as many people as could or should find these, like I say, rediscover themselves, refine these things, manage to, because I think everything is kind of pushing us back into our routines and our little pigeonholes that we used to live in.
Because you had a purpose around that you found it easy to fight through it, because you said that lots of people went back to the gyms, and other personal trainers went back to working in the gyms, but you didn't, because you'd found this little niche, this little purpose that and that, even though it was really difficult, that purpose was driving you forward. Is it fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do genuinely believe that everybody has that within them. And I think we all have those moments. I think literally everybody, probably more regularly than we'd ever realize, has those moments where there is an opportunity. Maybe opportunity is not even the right word. Maybe moment is actually the right word, where you can go left and it will lead to a new path and something new or something revisited that is very much you, or you can turn right and follow the path that's signposted. It's signaled. Go right. Everything's telling you to go right, because that's normal and safe and what you're used to, or what everyone else is doing. And that makes it a real challenge. But then, exactly as you said, if you found your purpose, or found a purpose that is actually pushing you the other way, then you're more likely, if anything, to take it. I mean, I think of the analogy of when you're going on holiday. Like, let's take a driving holiday, and we're going to go up to Scotland, from the southeast. You've got two options. You've got the most direct, quickest route that everybody's going to take, that's going to get you there within a day. It's going to be monotonous, but it's going to get you there. Or you can take all the little scenic routes and side turns, and it might take you 2 or 3 days to get there. But wow, what are you going to see and experience and take on by doing that? And we're pushed to do that direct, quick route, whether it's internally pushed to do it or externally or a bit of both. I don't know, but that's kind of the general sense. And I think if you woke up and your purpose of this trip was to see as much of the country as possible, and that's your purpose, you're not gonna take the motorway. You're gonna go and follow those scenic routes. So it probably does make it a lot easier if you found a purpose that's taking you off the beaten or the trodden path, then it probably is easier to, in that sense, I suppose, stay true to yourself. It doesn't make it easy, especially when everyone else is telling you to do the opposite. That was the thing. I mean,
It's
I know
difficult,
people
isn't
thought,
it? It
yeah,
is
and
difficult.
they tell you you're mad. You know, I'm sure you've had it as well with a change of career. When you change your career, people probably looked at you and were like, what are you doing? Like, why?
You know, how strongmen supported you over the last 3 years? Has that changed, you think, or is
Yeah,
it?
I mean, I think the big thing being, I mean, I probably should, as things we have started talking about them, we should probably point out because it's 5 years, it'll be 5 years old very soon, in fact. Um, so I think I would have spoken to Ephraim and Dan quite early after that, after it started. It was very early on, but then we went into the pandemic times or whatever we're supposed to call them, and obviously that stalled what they were able to do and offer. So I got to engage with you all, and we did things, obviously, didn't we, over Zoom, and there were conversations, and we did stuff on social media, and instantly I felt part of that community, and it started to really help me. But I hadn't actually experienced any of the stuff that the organisation at the charity actually did. It was all via the internet.
Yeah.
So obviously since then I have gone on, as have you, because I've been on some of them with you.
Yep.
Quite a few little adventures where we've gone out and climbed mountains and camped in snowy fields and got absolutely drenched and frozen in the Brecons and all sorts. You know, been to the Formula One garages at Alpine and then the Academy Day last year. I mean, they just continue to offer support in so many ways. And obviously, there's as I think with anything like charitable or any kind of organisation that deals with, well, the mental health of any type, and obviously in this case grief, there is still a buy-in. You can't They can't do it all for you. You have to be a willing participant on some level. You have to put yourself in front of them. And the great thing is that as long as you're willing to do that, they are there to support you and to help you in any way the charity possibly can. So a much more practical based and physical journey with them since we came out of the lockdowns. And I know there's a lot more to come, which we'll probably touch on at some point. But
Exciting stuff.
yeah, so much stuff. But it's good because you know, I met you obviously through them, and we've now met plenty of others. Like I say, it's just the turnout is quite amazing when you think that it is such a young charity and it's actually a very small entity in terms of the team behind the scenes. It's I don't even want to guess at how few in single figures it actually is, but I think it is single figures. It's amazing the amount of events and help and the reach that gets turned out by by essentially a very small core group of people. And that's testament to itself, like
100%.
absolutely. So it's been good. And it's the community side of it. I mean, you know, linking it all back to purpose. If you're a person, a people driven person, which I think is probably what I would describe myself as, and I think it's probably what you are as well. It's that engagement with people. It's, you know, working. What we do is we work with people. Like we might bring a specific skill set to it that's different and unique to, like, what I do to what you do and what you do to what I do. But actually what we're really doing is we're engaging with people, we're talking to people, we're making people feel at ease in what it is we're doing with them, with your side, you know, making them relaxed and I mean, I'm like Chandler Bing if you try and take a photo of me. It's like that. But you've obviously got your skill set that's very specific that you use to make the people you're working with
Sure.
relaxed and calm and everything. And similarly, it's the same in exercise, because if someone turns up timid and a bit uptight and nervous, they're not gonna achieve what they want to achieve. You've got to try and work through that. And then you bring the charity into that, and you think about that's exactly what they're doing as well. They're trying to help people to open up and talk and engage with each other. It probably sounds a bit bizarre to say, but I think for people like you and I, it becomes very easy, because it starts to all like intertwine and become all interrelated and interconnected. And then the purpose comes back because you just keep refinding it. Like, I had obviously said very carefully, because I can't say too much about individuals, but I had a gentleman come and see me this week who, ironically, considering we're talking about pandemic times, contracted COVID and has had a really hard time since then, like a massively hard time. And he's got to a point now in his life where he's just about able to start trying to undo all of the little problematic things that have arisen from that time. And he's reached out and, as a professional to me, asking for my professional advice as a personal trainer. But instantly, all of those threads start coming in. It's not about just wanting to help this, person who's going to pay me get a bit fitter so he keeps paying me. There's no purpose in that. That's just work. It's I've got invested and I've bought into his story specifically. And now the purpose is I genuinely want to help him, and it becomes multifaceted. I mean, just a side note on that, he was telling me that he used to be an avid horse rider, and at the moment he can't. But as part of his motivation, he has loaned a horse that he wants to be able to ride in the summer. And I just span that on its head and said, I tell you what, if in 6 months' time, you've made the progress and you're really happy, we're going to go horse riding, because I would love to get back on a horse again. And it's been about 6 months, and go horse riding. So you just keep finding little ways of reinventing your own purpose, but then hopefully helping other people like find their purpose as well, and reinvent things. And I'm fairly certain that in me, that's been born out of engaging with strongmen. It'll have always been there, but I think being around similar-minded, like-minded people, similar individuals in different ways, has given me its confidence, isn't it? It's given me the confidence to pursue and actually follow through with these things. And it's that thing as well. Sometimes, I mean, I think we did say this before. I think there's an element of, we've all got different stories. We've all, with the charity, we've all got a shared connection in that it's the grief that is our shared experience. But how we've lived it is very different. How we felt it is very different. And as you say, we all bring that with us, like differently to the table. But when you hear someone else's story, when you hear someone else's experience, it doesn't matter like how different it is to yours. You instantly have that empathy, but you also instantly have a little pang of, oh my God, like that this person has had it. What you always think someone else's is worse than your own. And we've all said it before. And it's interesting because every experience is different, but no experience is worse or better than anyone's. They're all in this particular instance, unfortunately, they're all tragic. But you always feel like that. And that's quite an important, I think, and powerful thing, because I think that's the key moment for most of us that is the trigger point to start processing your own thoughts and feelings on something. The second you're encouraged, and it has to be encouraged in a way that is very innocent, to not think so internally about just how you feel, is the start of the process where you start to then really same process, aren't I? But really process your feelings and your how you're going, the mechanisms you're going to use to go through that. But always go through it. I know it's a conversation I've had a lot recently with various members when when we've been meeting, doing different things, is that I think the idea that some people have that grief or actually any kind of impact you have on your mental state, I'm not going to say mental health, I'm going to say mental state, is a short-term thing. I don't think they ever go away. I don't think any of these things ever end. They just change. And sometimes when they change for the better. And sometimes when they change for the worse. And there's no linear path to that either. I think it can go up and down, left and right, backwards and forwards.
Totally.
And I think with grief, you see, I mean, I don't mind admitting this, but I had a moment just at this weekend. It's been 9.5 years now since my mum passed. And I was wrapping presents early. I was trying to be organised. So I'd got ahead of myself and I was wrapping presents. And it was a Saturday, just gone Saturday night. And I'm not going to lie, I had a little whiskey on the go because, I was sitting here with the old dog and wrapping the presents. He's just looking at me like I'm loopy. And I had Absolute Radio 80s playing. I love the old 80s tunes, for the sort of party vibe. And a song came on and I just had this, it was a split second moment where it just reminded me, it took me back to being probably 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, and in the back of my mum's car on a sunny day, and it would have been on the radio. And my knees just crumpled, like just instantly just crumpled underneath me. And I collapsed in a heap on the kitchen floor and just sobbed for about 2-3 minutes, completely like out of the blue, uncontrollable. Like just hit me like I'd been hit by a brick wall out of nowhere. And afterwards I got up and I was like, that's odd. That wasn't expecting that. And it was just this little snapshot of the song that threw me back. And you sit there and I think in the past I would have taken that and I'd have probably been thinking things like, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Why can I not, why am I not getting better? Or why am I not moving forward? Whereas now I feel like I've learned that that's just because that's what it is. It's not, you don't get better. You don't move forward. It changes. And then sometimes it changes again. And like I say, when it changes and it's a positive change, you feel better about it all. When it changes and it's a not so positive change, it can wipe the floor with you. So
yeah, I think that what's important to add to that is that it's because you understand that, or we understand that, it doesn't become a problem anymore. It's that, do you know what? I needed, I obviously, something in my brain needed that little moment.
Absolutely.
I now feel better because of it, because it needed to process it in that particular way and just to let it happen rather than go, as you said a moment ago, oh, there's something wrong with me. I can't cope with it. I need medication. I need to go to a counsellor or whatever it might be. I think that's a real important distinction you made.
Yeah. And it's something that's definitely changed and shifted within me in the last few years. I mean, bringing us back to our central theme of like changes in the last 3 years, that's one of them. I think when we spoke before, I wasn't in a bad place by in the slightest, but I think at that moment in time, had I gone through that exact same sequence or scenario, I would have been questioning it. Whereas this time, exactly as you just said, once I'd picked myself back up and I'd had that moment, I just carried on. The music was still playing, the whiskey was still there, the rapping still happened. And I just accepted that it happened. And I just thought, exactly like you said, I was like, I obviously needed it. I obviously needed that moment. It's that time of year. It's obviously going to feel a bit more raw and, with all of the festivities and the notion of family. And I needed it. And in any sense, I'd rather it happen then, like Christmas Day in the middle of dinner with everyone around me, because that would be far more challenging.
Yeah, that would be more challenging because it won't be necessarily you worrying about it, but everybody else worrying about
everyone else. What's going on? But but it is a really, I think in that sense I've grown with it. I mean, I don't always like to use the word grown because I'm not meaning it in the sense that I was any lesser before, but I think that my understanding of or my sense of feeling around it all has grown. It's matured. And that puts me in I was going to say a much stronger place, but actually I think it's a much safer place as much as anything else as well. And And there are always going to be people that will raise eyebrows or frown at that sort of notion. But I actually think it's quite empowering to be that in touch now with how I feel about it all, and being able to accept that that's what happened. It doesn't make me a weaker person or any less of a person or anything like that. It just makes me a person, is what it
Definitely
does.
not.
And that's important. And the great thing is that threading it back to purpose, when you start to feel that way or understand that, or you go through those experiences yourself, it's much easier to be empathetic and to be a listening station, an arm, an ear for other people who might not be there yet, and you can be understanding and offer them something that perhaps other aspects of the world are not offering them at that moment in time, which again breeds more purpose. Because what can be more purposeful than doing good and helping other people? I struggle to see beyond that. That's kind of like, that's got to be the main goal of anyone. Like I would challenge anyone to help someone and not have at least a tiny little bit of them that feels really good for it.
It's almost addictive, isn't it? I used to take the mickey out of my wife and sort of say about, oh, you're just a bloody do-gooder, you're always too busy helping other people. And it's always a bit of a joke about it. But when you look at it objectively, well, you do get something back from it. You do feel
Absolutely.
a little bit of, and it's not big-headed. I mean, it might be for some, I don't know, but certainly for me, it's not about because I want to feel that way. It's because well, it is and it isn't. It's like, yeah, it makes me feel good, but it makes them feel better. And I think that's the important thing. If people helped me, as people helped you, and by thinking, well, if they help me, then I can help others. And that's why
Exactly.
we're very much part of the Strongmen charity, but also just in life in general. And I have found
Yeah.
myself becoming more open to sort of that. Look, I want to support you. I want to help you, and go the extra mile to help someone in a particular way that they need, even if they don't know it that they need
Yeah.
it.
But then that's that's part of your purpose now.
Yeah,
That's where you've found purpose in that too. And the beautiful thing about it all, though, I find, is that I now see it in others as well. So I literally, it was yesterday, I was driving between clients, and I was actually running a little bit late. So I was a little bit stressed because I don't like being late. And then as I was coming through one of the more built up areas, a lady like put her hand up to slow me down, stop me. And my first reaction as a normal human being was, oh, for God's sake. But I did stop. And I'm so glad I did, because she'd stopped me because she was desperately trying to help a very elderly lady with like a walking frame across the road. And as soon as I realized that, I actually positioned, because I drive a van these days, I positioned my van to like completely block the road so that no one tried to go round me and cause a problem. And it took this poor old lady about 90 seconds, maybe even 2 minutes to cross the road with this lady's help. But I genuinely couldn't stop smiling, because it was just the fact that this woman, because when she crossed the road, the lady that crossed back and went the other way. So they weren't together or anything. It was a genuine moment where this lady has obviously seen this elderly person, struggling to get a gap in the traffic to cross the road, and was gonna struggle. And she just did the right thing.
yeah.
And it's mad that I'm actually commenting on this like it's a strange thing, but I can't remember the last time I ever witnessed something like that. And so I've got the real warm buzz of having witnessed it, and then the little pang of, why don't we see that more often? Like, it should be a regular thing. It really should be a regular thing.
It should, but it is rare, unfortunately. But once you see that, it's almost like what do you call it, when you drop a stone in a pond, the ripple
ripples.
effect. So you saw that good deed. It made you feel good about that deed that you witnessed, but also good about yourself because you stopped and also helped. And then you probably went on to help somebody else later on that day. It becomes, it spreads.
It
I'm not
absolutely
one of these
does.
kind of woo, pass it forward and all the rest of it. But there's something to be said about it, isn't there?
I mean, I've actually seen that film. I don't know if you know, you just mentioned a film, but I have seen that film. I think I had to watch it when I was a kid. It's called Pay It Forward. Same
All right.
thing though. And the concept of the film is you just go and do a good deed for the sake of doing a good deed. And when the person thanks you and is like, oh, what, blah, 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 you just say, the only thing I ask is now you go and do a good deed. Not for me, but for the next person. And I think it was based on like a school project. It was a teacher's idea in the film. It was a school project to see. And then these deeds just went full circle.
Oh, I've not
Um,
seen that.
it was a novel idea. It was one of those heartwarming. I wouldn't normally watch them. One of those heartwarming films, but the principle is sound. I think if there's that whole thing there. If there's so many people in the world, if every person just did one good deed, it's an awful lot of good that gets done in a very short space of time. It just apparently isn't that simple.
Obviously, we've covered quite a lot already. I'm just conscious of the amount of time that we've been, well, mainly you've been chatting, obviously. But what's next? What's happening in the future? What have you got coming up that's could be interesting to talk about?
Well, I mean, bizarrely, I can answer this all. I could do this forever. This bit, but probably for the first time ever, I actually have a proper long-term plan, which is I never thought was something that I would say. Um,
Can I just
and
say, yeah,
I'll make it succinct.
I didn't think I'd hear you say that either. But that's
No,
just,
no, I genuinely do. I know now. I think, and this is definitely born out of the last 3 years. It is since we last spoke and did this. This is
yeah.
something that's developed through that time, and it's quite obvious, really, in some respects. There's a natural upscaling, a natural progression to what I do. I mean, I realized that I could, if I wanted to, just carry on working essentially from home, with my small studio and my small client base, and ticking over, and that would work. But I would lose purpose doing that. Eventually, it would, as awful as it sounds, it would become monotonous and it would just become work. And I think that, we've said it, I think we said it before. I know we say it all the time when we're not doing this, but the notion of growth and needing to grow, it's kind of, I think, really fundamental and important for everybody. So I've actually written a business plan, which again, something I never thought. I think that you're shocked at that as well. Yeah, look at this.
I'm sitting down.
I know. And it's a long shot, but I have planned it in stages, and the essence of it, the end goal would be to essentially, I want to buy some land, and I want to create a like purpose built retreat. And it's quite something because it factors in everything we've ever spoken about, again, in private and doing this, where the grand scheme would be to buy some land. In an ideal world, it would be land that I could make fairly self-sufficient. I would love to have running like a stream, a river, something on that land that I could tap into, somewhere where it's quite windy, so I can tap into that as well. But I want to build spaces that, the main spaces out of shipping containers, repurposed shipping containers, and then I want to cover them in living walls from the outside, so they bed into the spot, so you wouldn't see them. The only thing you'd see is some glass. And again, if I had flowing water, I'd have the glass facing that, so it's like a reflection extension of that. And then it would be in its smallest form, it would just be a new purpose-built training facility. There'd be a training studio there for for what I do for personal training. But I'd like to have other trainers come and work alongside me, I think, is the way I'd say it. I don't want them to work for me. I don't want it to be like that. I want them to come and it would be like-minded trainers. And then they'd probably, I think, in an ideal world, probably the best way to do it is they'd rent space off me, which is generally how it works in the personal training world anyway. But we'd need to be closely aligned. And then I'd rent the whole thing out to in an ideal world, like yoga instructors and Pilates, people that want to do like spiritual weekends and spiritual retreats. I want to have yurts and teepees, and I mean, there's so much to it. I could go on forever. I won't share all the detail, but essentially the grand scheme is to have this space, and then linking it into everything. I've actually said this to Ephraim before, you know, it would be something that I would give to the charity for a weekend or two as well, as another little base that they could run probably a smaller version of some of the things they do, but still something that wouldn't cost them a penny to then, you know, facilitate from and do stuff. And I can put in an archery range and I can do all the things I want to do, and it just be home. And but a space that lots of people could utilize. And the key thing is, and I'm gonna finish the grand scheme with this, but the key thing is none of it would be permanent. It would all be semi-permanent. And then the whole principle of what I want to do is that when I go, it goes to, and the legacy would be that it would return to exactly what it was before, whether that is a paddock or woodland or whatever. And I want it to be something that, just like me, has come and graced a space and then gone. Wow. Has its time. That's the big plan. But that might take 20 years. So in an ideal world, it's like backpacking. Rather than a holiday, it's more like backpacking. I've got a general gist of where I want to end up, or I'd like to end up, but I'm not really planning it how I'm just going to go and do stuff and in that general direction, and we'll see if I make it or not. And that's fine, because, you know, it's much better than stressing myself with this has got to happen in this way at this time. Probably everything in between is in some way, shape, or form working towards that.
Fantastic.
But that said, it could all change. But I think if it ever changed, it wouldn't change completely. It would just be a different version of that in some way, shape, or form, because it is quite a large, multifaceted goal that might need tweaking and variations along the way. But we will see. It makes it an enjoyable experience as well. It's not just that it takes the stress away; it makes the whole thing enjoyable. It makes it all an adventure, because rather than, you know, anything could happen between now and, we say then, I don't know when then is, but it's on me whether those things that happen are perceived positively or negatively. I think that's another thing that I've kind of come to realize. Like, you know, when we did this before and we spoke a lot more about where I'd come from.
Yeah.
And a lot of those experiences were things that felt negative at the time, and certainly I think a lot of people would view as negative. But actually, you know, as soon as you get into a clearer headspace, or you find yourself on a better footing, you kind of have that moment of realization where you go that you probably needed those things to happen in that way to get to where you are now. So unless you're truly unhappy with where you are or where you're going, none of those things were actually negative. They were possibly necessary, even though that's a horrible thing to say sometimes. There's an element of it that I think is potentially true, and it shapes you, doesn't it? That's the thing. The experiences, regardless of whether you put positive or negative spin on it, they shape you, and that informs what you do next.
Yeah, it's interesting because I actually, oddly enough, I saw a social media post today, in fact, that resonated exactly what you're saying. It was she's a business coach, and she put here, I'm going to below is the list of things that I'd like to change about my 20s, 30s, and 40s, and it was a blank page.
Yeah,
and that kind of resonated exactly what you're saying about that sort of, well, although there was lots of negatives that happened in those, I don't want to change them because it's where I am now.
It would change. It's that thing. I mean, quote more films, but it's the whole thing, Back to the Future. You know, you only have to change one thing, and everything changes. You can't. So you've got to be careful with these things. They're, you know, life happens, and you kind of have to go with it, because you can't do anything other than that, really.
I mean, there is I suppose, not a risk or a dangerous side of that, is that you, like you said earlier or a moment ago, about that if you're in a position where you are unhappy with you are,
Mm.
uh, it's about, well, what, but then it still gives you the option to look back and sort of think, well, what those decisions that I made there, and learn from them, because that's obviously led to me where I am
Mm.
today. And so you still, even though it's a negative place you're in now, you can still learn from those things, but it's about them making the decision about where you're going to go next, as you clearly have
Yeah.
with your.
And I think the interesting thing is, I mean, obviously there are exceptions to what I'm about to say. I'm not quite blindly believing what I'm about to say, but I think whenever they're, an incredibly successful person writes a book, someone's made, a Lord Sugar, if you like, or even, dare I say, a Donald Trump. He's probably the exception to what I'm saying, but most of these people, they don't usually dwell on it for very long because they want to talk about their successes, or people want to hear about their successes, but they all have that moment of near or actual bankruptcy, near
Yeah,
or actual homelessness. They've all been to the precipice of the dark place and then gone beyond that and come back. And I think that's really important, because everybody has the ability to do that. Everybody has the ability to facilitate that on their own terms. You just have to believe that you do. You have to just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep going. And I know it's an easy thing to say, and we all know it's not actually that easy to do. But it is true, because the only time you actually fail is the time that you stop.
yeah.
And maybe that's the trait, the gym instructor and the sportsman in me coming out. But it's true of all walks of life. You only truly fail the minute you stop. So keep going, keep trying, keep walking. I
Cool.
mean, it's the same. It's, in essence, it's the same. It's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
community that's been created through strongmen is actually a lot like a business network. When you go to a business networking meeting, if there's 90 people there and only two are even loosely connected to what you do, there's still two people that you can definitely talk to, and actually 88 people that you can listen to and potentially cherry pick bits that you can make valuable to you. It's worth listening to everybody, isn't it? And then, from in the strongman, that's exactly what happens. No two stories of the trauma and the grief are the same, but there are always elements that resonate. It might be a feeling that resonated. It might be an act that someone did or wanted to do when they felt a way that resonates. But the fact is, if you listen to someone intently enough, you'll be able to relate to something that they say. You always can. So it is important, isn't it, to communicate and to be open to ideas and things, and not just shut yourself away, which sometimes is easy to do. But
Very much so. Very much so. I know we could go on for hours. I know we can talk for hours. Well, say you can talk for hours, and I can
I can talk
listen.
for hours. You can listen.
I am a good listener, but I wanted to sort of bring you back to next year,
Yeah,
because something's happening, isn't it? Something we're going to be doing something that's going to be very interesting,
we
and
are.
I thought it would be very nice for you to share a little bit about that. And it's all kind of linked into a little bit to why you out of the blue got in contact with me and said, let's do the podcast again. So what's that all about then?
It's also very closely linked to a lot of what we've been talking about in loose ways, but it is. We and possibly about 19 others are going to. I'm going to say going to. I'm not going to even say attempt. I'm going to say we're going to.
We're going to.
We are going to Tanzania, and we are going to summit Mount Kilimanjaro in October next year. And
Wow.
it is with the Strongmen organization, with the group. It's both incredibly exciting and ever so slightly nerve-wracking at the same time. Like, the more I think about the actual act of doing, the more I realize that it might be slightly more challenging than I ever
It's just a
anticipated. It's a proper exciting. It's such a multifaceted thing to do, because I think we're all, everybody that's going is someone that is related to strongmen, which means we've all come together through grief. I think that it's going to be a trip where we all find things out about ourselves individually as well as probably about each other. I imagine that we're all going to go to some fairly dark places at some point, even if it's brief, because I think we're all going to be going there with a purpose. Is the thing. It's where all the purpose comes back in, and essentially doing it as much for ourselves, but for the memory of someone. I think that's probably fair to say. That's why most of us, whether we realize it or not, that will be a key theme to the whole trip. So it's going to be an adventure, but it's also going to be a proper individual and group building activity, I think, is probably the best way to word it.
It's going to be very personal to every individual. You know, we've
Yeah.
all got our own personal reasons for doing it and for who we're doing it for. But at the same time, there's that group mentality of, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to smash it out of the park, and we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to have an adventure, to say the least. I'm sure there'll be lots of conversations, which also kind of led me on to asking you the other question that I was going to ask you. It was about, this is how this came about, this reboot of the podcast, if you like. Although it might not reboot, I think been doing this today, I've really, really enjoyed it, and it's really inspired me to bring it back. But what else were we talking about?
So I brought to you the idea that we essentially revisit this, was the starting point, but then maybe as a little side venture, like a little branch off of this, wouldn't it be nice if we gave all the other members of our group, our team, our squad, whatever words people want to find appropriate, a platform to talk about it, to talk about what we're doing, why they specifically wanted to do it, wanted to be a part of it, a bit of background on themselves and their journeys and what it will mean to them. Because I just thought, it is actually, like you said, it's something that's on a lot of people's bucket lists. It is an amazing opportunity. It would be very easy to go out and do it and come back and it just be done. And it would still be amazing. But wouldn't it be even better if what we do in the meantime is we create almost like a journal in the build up to it through people's voices and through communication like this. And then we all know we're all going to be filming elements of the trip when we're there and doing it. We can continue through that and then maybe have something at the end as well that wraps it all up. So you've got the whole journey of why these 19, 20 individuals have come together to achieve this feat. I'm going to call it a feat. It still seems like quite a feat to me. And the ways in which that we will support each other, because we're going to have to. There are going to be moments, and it doesn't necessarily mean, I said dark earlier. It doesn't necessarily mean dark moments. It could simply be that someone's got sore feet, but we're going to have to support one another. And it links back into purpose. We're all doing it for a purpose. We will probably all find some new purpose whilst doing it. And with any luck, we'll all come out with a renewed vigor and desire to continue that purpose. And it'd just be nice to document that whole thing in case anybody is interested or needs it or will find their own purpose or use through it, which would be nice.
Certainly from my perspective, and I'm sure it's from everyone that we've kind of worked with and know, if I can tell my story in a certain way that even if it's just one person hears it and goes, you know what, that sounds like me, that sounds like my life, and maybe there is a chance for me to find my purpose again after loss or whatever it might be. And I think that's a kind of almost how I feel as an obligation. People help me, and if I can just tell a story that inspires somebody or helps somebody to overcome some challenge, then it's worth sharing, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think attached to that is the fact that, although we're doing this independently, the best way to share the fact that there is an organization that can help people is to talk about it. And, you know, we share our experiences. If other people come and share their experiences, it comes back to that. Someone will say something that resonates with someone that needs it. And if the key thing here is that we link together that there is, even as simple as there is, an organization that can help, and that helps another person,
100%.
then it was worth. And even if it's one person, that's still one person that wouldn't have been helped otherwise. So it becomes a very worthwhile as well as fun and enjoyable thing to do.
I think just to sort of wrap things up a little bit, I think that having done this today, completely, well, I'd say not completely unplanned, but we didn't really know how it was going to go. We didn't know how we were going to talk about it. Obviously, we haven't watched it back yet.
No,
but I've got a feeling that it's actually pretty good. I don't really care if other people don't like it. I just think that I've enjoyed it, and I think we should just definitely get it out there and for other people to listen to. So my question is not to you, but to everybody who's actually watching this: is this something that you would like to see more of? Whether it's listening to the Wolfman himself yabber on for hours on end, or about just talking about purpose and our, obviously a little bit more about our Kilimanjaro trip next year. I mean, what do you think? I mean, obviously put some comments in the down below in the YouTube video, but I've certainly enjoyed myself, and I think that, like we just said, if one person watches it and thinks, you know what, let's give it a go, then we're up for it.
exactly. And I will add to that, because I have to add to everything, don't I?
Yes,
I promise that if anyone is thinking I'd like that, but he talks a lot, I will be a bit quieter with other people talking, I promise.
Yeah, well, it remains to be seen, mate. Any final words, mate? Because I know you have to add to that.
I just would like to thank you, because it's been nice to catch up. It felt like when we did the first one that, I mean, I really enjoyed doing the first one as equally, to be fair, but I did feel like it needed revisiting. And I don't actually know why. I mean, maybe it was because I enjoyed it, but it felt like it needed revisiting. So I'm pleased that we have. And I would like us to certainly, I think the notion of doing this as a little serial with the other guys, because I think as much as anything else, you know, it can help other people who might get something from listening to it. But I also think there's a very cathartic experience from actually getting a moment to share your own experiences and thoughts. And I think we'd be helping the others in our group, which is what we're all about anyway, isn't it? To be fair, and it would be a nice way to start to get excited as well for the future. So yeah, I'm just pleased we've done it, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
Me too, mate. Me too. I think on that note, we're going to call it a day. So anyway, I mean, if anybody watches this, thank you for watching. Thank you for any feedback that you can give us. If you want to get involved, give us a shout, and let's see what we can do. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely.